Before we get to the mockery of martial arts that is today's episode, quick shout out to Bitmap Books and their forthcoming release of The King of Fighters: The Ultimate History. It's a gorgeous 500-page tome filled with artwork, information, character profiles, and insightful developer interviews. I have a few releases from Bitmap Books, and they all come highly recommended as they are always high quality and incredibly comprehensive. If you're interested in pre-ordering your copy, hit the link in the description below. And thanks again to Bitmap for sponsoring today's video. Welcome to another door-smashing, car-crashing, and arm-slashing episode of What Happened, the show that'll single-handedly take down the most evil drug gang in all of Los Angeles with semi-thorough investigative reporting. Or maybe not. 1991's Samurai Cop is known in most trash movie circles as a pinnacle of the genre, often whispered in the same breath as greats like The Room, Troll 2, and the entire filmography of Neil Breen.
How could you have committed suicide?
But it wasn't always so. Its journey to the hallowed halls of legendarily bad cinema was not straightforward at all, and in fact took 22 years of almost complete obscurity to get there. So sharpen your katanas and find a comfy spot under your mounted lion head, because it's time to find out what happened to Samurai Cop.
It means Japanese sword.
This celluloid tour de force was written, directed, co-produced, and even co-edited by Amir Shervan, who was born in Iran in 1929. He grew up fascinated by the silver screen, which eventually led him to pursue a career in the arts. He would travel to California to study theater and film at Pasadena City College, before returning to Iran, where he got busy consistently and thoroughly.
So he's proactive, huh?
Initially, he performed in plays and small parts for movies before transitioning fully into behind-the-camera roles, usually multiple per film, on almost 30 productions throughout the 60s and 70s. Tragically, his career would come to a screeching halt in 1979 during the Iranian Revolution, where anti-American sentiment had taken hold of the country. This directly impacted media and the arts, with scores of productions being censored or banned altogether by the state. Knowing his style of filmmaking was becoming untenable in his home country, he returned to the US in 1980, unfortunately leaving his final 2 Iranian films unfinished. After relocating to California, he established his own production company, Hollywood Royal Productions. Damn, look at that classy logo. By the time he had his operation up and running, there was one specific genre of movie that was clearly dominating cineplexes across the country, and that was the action film. Everyone was piggybacking off the success of stars like Sly, Arnie, and to a lesser extent, Van Damme. Amir was evidently into them just as much as anyone else, and would put out 5 action films between 1987 and 1991. That would be no small feat for even the most seasoned of directors, so how did he do it? Well, through a variety of techniques, but mostly by being cheap as shit. According to a fairly legitimate-looking Reddit post claiming to be an excerpt from a foreign book on Iranian film directors, link in description if you want to analyze it, Amir was quite successful and consistent with his work in his home country. He never managed to craft a masterpiece, but he did make the studios money, and in turn got to work with some pretty sizable budgets. He didn't have any of this in Hollywood, where getting even a single film made and turning a profit on it would be a 1 in a million shot, so Amir had to get creative in spending the least amount of money possible. The penny pinching began immediately with 1987's Hollywood Cop, followed by Young Rebels, Gypsy, Killing American Style, and finally our beloved Samurai Cop.
I know the real samurai is here.
It would tell the story, or more accurately, a series of loosely connected scenes, of Joe Marshall, a San Diego police officer who was trained, probably wrongly, by the masters in Japan. While buddy cop action flicks like Lethal Weapon or Tango and Cash were obvious inspirations for pretty much all of Amir's late 80s output,
Yes! Yes! I love John Conan the Barbarian!
the rising popularity of martial arts movies in North America was even more apparent, led by such masterpieces as American Ninja 1-3 and more Chuck Norris films than I care to even list. These were all pretty obvious inspirations for Joe Marshall. In terms of budget, well, no one but Shervan really knows for sure, but safe to say it was incredibly low. I mean, look at it.
Hey man, watch it! Watch it! Oh man!
His plan was to start filming in June of 1990, but there was one tiny problem. He was still missing his star. A lot of the following information comes from the fascinating sit-down interview between the samurai cop himself, Matt Hannon, and the weirdos down at RedLetterMedia, so big ups to them for uncovering the secrets of the Bushido. Hannon, a former bodyguard of Sylvester Stallone, had gotten shredded as shit in order to increase his chances of nabbing a part in anything he could, which, as it turns out, he was quite unsuccessful in doing. A friend told him to look up Amir on the off chance he might have a part needing to be filled, and Hannon, desperate for footage to add to his small reel, walked into the offices of Hollywood Royal Productions with low expectations. Call it fate, destiny, whatever you want, but Amir immediately took one look at Hannon and offered him the role of Joe Marshall on the spot, without the actor ever even auditioning. Hannon was blindsided, but accepted, despite not even knowing what movie he just landed the starring role for. Amir then told him they were going to be shooting the very next week and handed him a script. Once Hannon started reading, he had what can charitably be described as reservations. English was not Amir's first language, so the script came off as more than a little stilted and a whole lot of bizarre.
What's going on, Steve?
Not much, sir. There's a nurse in there giving him an injection. He's burned pretty bad.
Hannon then inquired if he could tweak his own dialogue, which Amir enthusiastically agreed to. When shooting began the very next week, Hannon wanted to discuss the rewrites for his character, but Amir had evidently changed his mind. No changes would be made. Read the lines as written, and I have no idea what you're talking about. In the interview with Red Letter, Hannon only recalled 2 instances of lines getting ad-libbed on the spot. His own anecdote about killing a chicken for a candlelit lunch, and this milestone moment right here.
Why did you come under?
I'm an undercover cop.
I just needed to give that one-liner some room to breathe. The following 8 minutes will now break down all the problems Samurai Cop faced, financially, conceptually, and just the whole thing, really. The first and probably most important facet of the film's production was the fact that almost every shot was completed in a single take. As long as nothing disastrous happened, Amir was fine with the first go and would then quickly move on. This is part of the reason why the film is littered with continuity errors, flubbed lines, and even blooper-level instances of wigs falling off the actors, which we'll get to in a bit. Certain scenes also have incredibly different color tones and quality, which is because whenever they did run out of film, Amir used whatever other film stock he could, instead of, buying more of the same stuff. Related to that, if you've ever seen Samurai Cop or any of Shervan's macho action disasters, you might have noticed there's not a single scene that ever happens at night. This is because if you only ever shoot in the daytime, you don't have to buy expensive lighting rigs or different camera equipment. That's some next level outside the box shit. Another old trick he employed to make every dollar count was to only film on locations he or his friends or friends of friends personally owned. Whenever you see an interior, it's usually the home of someone related to the production or the offices of Hollywood Royal itself, which is a move that again must have come from some book called Advanced Movie Making. Look, down here, here's James Cameron and Steven Spielberg stuck there at level 1, and here is Shervan. Of course, this meant several locations didn't really make any sense given the context of the scene. Like, why is Joe in an editing room? It doesn't matter. It's a location we own, so action! Moving on, instead of hiring someone to be the head of the costume department, they simply didn't by not having a costume department at all. All the actors wore their own clothes. A similar practice was also instituted when it came to vehicles. Almost every car you see, including this blue van that's speculated to be Amir's Hollywood Royal Productions van, was owned by someone on the staff. Fight scenes are typically some of the longest, most arduous parts of the filming process. Coordinating the actors and making the whole thing look like a seamless action set piece while keeping everyone safe takes a lot of time and effort, which meant the opposite approach was used in filming Samurai Cop. Gerald Okamura, a martial arts staple in the 80s and 90s, was able to choreograph some of the film's fights, but when he wasn't on set, it was all up to the actors to choreograph their own scenes. According to Hannon, Amir would let them take up to 20 minutes to rehearse a fight scene right before shooting it, which explains, how bad they all were. The climactic katana battle between Samurai Cop and Maniac Cop was even filmed with the actors doing slow, deliberate movements and then sped up in the edit. Thankfully, you can hardly tell. But the ultimate example of Shervan's fast and loose filming style was the fact he did not have a proper shooting schedule set in place. Let me explain. A schedule lets everyone on the production know which scene needs to be shot on what day and where. Simple, right? Instead of that, Shervan would just tell the actors to show up at a new location the night before, so they really had no idea what was in store for them. So when Matt Hannon and Frank's actor, Mark Fraser, showed up one day at a dusty patch of nothing, Shervan told them they'd both be responsible for putting out the flames on a stunt actor with no fire marshal or safety experts on set. Now, going by the book to organize such a stunt normally costs money and time, so of course, that wasn't a thing that was gonna happen. Neither of the two actors had any training for something like this, but thankfully, there were no injuries. Just a stuntman captured on film forever, looking around frantically, hoping he would not die making a movie called Samurai Cop. Shervan's plan was to complete the initial shoot within 3 weeks, and you'd think, with all the time-saving measures, that'd be a piece of cake. But wouldn't you know, it wasn't. Filming languished for almost 3 months, which was due to Shervan regularly needing to halt production to find more money and or develop what was already filmed to get an idea of what he needed to shoot next. So after a bumbling, sweaty, and awkward summer, Samurai Cop wrapped at the end of August, and it's here where Shervan would finally finish the film. Or would he? It was now January of '91, and Shervan realized that Samurai Cop was still missing a lot of connective tissue, like close-ups, establishing shots, and several small scenes. Now, that's pretty common on a lot of pictures, both big and small. However, Shervan also realized that a massive amount of previously shot footage was unusable. Matt Hannon didn't seem to know why that was, so your guess is as good as mine. Shervan then contacted Hannon and asked him to swing by his office, where Matt assumed he'd be able to receive a final cut of the movie, which, while he dreaded the idea of actually watching, really needed that footage for his reel. Unlike their first meeting, though, when Matt walked through the door, Amir was not pleased. The actor had cut his hair short between December and January on a recommendation from his agent, which then caused Amir to exclaim,
"You fucked up my film, where's your hair?" I go, "What are you talking about? We're done." "No, I have more to do."
Hannon fired back and said that he had been assured by Amir himself that filming was complete, but the director was having none of it. He grabbed his now short-haired Samurai Cop and personally drove him around Los Angeles to find a replacement wig, but could only procure what was clearly a mismatched feathery number. Hannon was worried about how it would look, no shit, but Amir told him it would only be used in long shots and at flattering angles, which was almost immediately revealed to not be the case. When Hannon showed up later that week, wig in hand, Amir explained that they would actually need to reshoot half the film.
Really? Really?
And not only that, the new scenes would be interspersed throughout the running time, mixed in with what was deemed usable from the previous material, so that's why the wig just comes and goes as it pleases. During all these reshoots, Hannon grew so frustrated that he purposely started messing up takes and giving poorer and poorer performances, with the hope that Amir would ask for a retake, but he never did, no matter how bad the initial attempt was. That's pretty naive on the part of Hannon.
Shame on me.
One of the most obvious signs of the new and old footage being mixed together is the fight between Joe and Okamura. Not only does the wig do whatever it wants, the background of the fight changes between shots. Shervan either couldn't get permission to refilm at the same locations or just didn't care about continuity. Possibly both? Shervan had also shot a huge portion of the movie in silence, with the intention to ADR the dialogue later, but since he had told the cast that filming was complete, many actors were no longer available. All he had was Hannon and Fraser, but rather than wait for the other actors to become available or pay for sound-alikes, Shervan simply dubbed his own voice in for all these minor characters.
Well, just a little business with him.
Hannon said Shervan never really got the hang of using the ADR machine himself, which is why the majority of his line readings sound so robotic.
Hey, wait a minute. I want to talk to you. Hey, wait a minute. Stop. Hey, wait a minute.
With the film finally edited, Amir then shopped it around to any distributor he could, whenever he could, but shockingly, there was almost zero interest, except for a Polish distributor who optioned the film for a VHS-only release. Lamentably, not being able to procure a wide release for Samurai Cop was certainly a huge financial blow, and it's possible that this, atop of the failures of his past 4 American films, is what caused Amir to quit directing entirely, with the same being said of many others close to the production. Matt Hannon would quit film acting altogether, and Mark Fraser would move back to New York to concentrate on theater. But you just can't keep a good Samurai Cop down. In the early 2000s, a 35mm print of Samurai Cop was discovered in a Los Angeles storage unit, most likely owned and forgotten by Amir, which led to the first DVD release by Media Blasters. Oh man, that's a company that sure existed. In 2004. However, this wasn't the right time for Joe to fully unsheath his sword, as this DVD unfortunately came and went with little fanfare. Then, in 2007, a short clip of the infamous horny nurse scene was uploaded to YouTube and became the fulcrum point for all things Samurai Cop. It slowly accrued views, with many incredulous that an actual finished film contains such dialogue as this.
Have you been circumcised?
Yeah, I have. Why?
Well, your doctor must have cut a big portion of it off.
No, he was a good doctor.
More sites and video sharing services started peeling back the many layers of Samurai Cop's ineptitude over the years until it caught the eye of genre film label Cinema Epoch, who then released a new transfer onto DVD in 2013 to hopefully capitalize on the film's burgeoning notoriety. A small theatrical run via film festivals pushed things even further until Cinema Epoch's Greg Hatanaka started making plans for a modern sequel, Samurai Cop 2, which would take place 25 years after the original. It would star Frank Washington, still played by Mark Fraser, and would see him team up with Joe Marshall's daughter, because Matt Hannon had reportedly died. But in a story truly worthy of what happened, Matt resurfaced with an online video made at the request of his daughter. The production team at Cinema Epoch had not been able to locate him initially because he had changed his name and decided to raise a family. With him now back in the shit, the script for Samurai Cop 2 was rewritten with him in mind. This unexpected resurrection, coupled with the hype for a sequel, was further fanned by online entertainers like RedLetterMedia, RiffTrax, and on top of them all, OSW Reviews, who exposed the original film to millions more. Samurai Cop 2 Deadly Vengeance, which actually has Tommy Wiseau in it, I still can't believe that, was released in October of 2015. And while the jury is very much still out on whether this was a worthy sequel or not, it wasn't, the 1991 disaster piece is still lauded by many as a pillar of American action film buffoonery. Tragically though, Amir Shervan would pass away in November 2006 due to complications after suffering a stroke, 6 years before Samurai Cop would get rediscovered. While the acclaim it receives nowadays may not be what he was originally aiming for, it is sad that Shervan couldn't live to see his final film get a new lease on life, and to see it be embraced by a new generation who cherish every awkward expression, random location switch, and every low-energy, poorly choreographed fight scene. And of course, that goddamn majestic lion head. Amir Shervan crossed oceans to learn and hone his craft, and completed over 30 feature films throughout his life. While he never managed to make that masterpiece every artist aspires to, he did finish with a bang, an incredibly earnest, entertaining film that will surely be remembered for decades to come. The legend of the Samurai Cop lives on.
God, man, look what they done to my car. Captain Roman's gonna burn my ass.
Yeah, he's gonna burn it. Charcoal black.
It is black.
Right on.
If you know of any other movies or video games with a story behind their creation, let me know in the comments, over on my Twitter, or slash into the Flophouse VIP Patreon and become a big boss to nominate what's coming up. Until then, keep it warm and ready, and thanks for watching.